And so if you don't know exactly, I guarantee there's probably somebody here who can help you out and will help you find them. And then it's a minimum of 3 letters of recommendation, but not to exceed 5. And a letter could be, you know, one of my favorite sayings is perfection's achieved not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. And it could be a beautiful 1 paragraph that encapsulates everything. It doesn't have to be a big, formal, 500-word letter. So we could help you do that. We could help find the information about that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Well done. Next, we're getting there. Bond project timeline prioritization. We brought this back because as of the last conversation, when you saw that at the last board meeting, that was the first time that you had seen all of that, and so some of you, well, none of you got to process the whole piece, and we had a couple of conversations on it, and one of the things that was cited as a conversation, or part of the conversation was, can we bring this back, put it in the board packet, because part of it is, I know it was going to be in the minutes, or it would be in the minutes, bring it out, so you make it part of the board packet, so that it's a completely covered document. Again, I know last time was the first time you got to see it, but I wanted to bring this back, and because there was a couple of other comments that were made, and a couple of other additions. So with that, you've seen it. I know you always review your packet, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Gregory if he wants to make any comments, or if you have any questions. I don't know, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you. Good evening. Quickly, this is going to look very similar to what you saw the last time. Essentially, based on the comments that I recorded from the last meeting, there's one significant addition, and if you look in the kind of the boxes in the center and right-hand columns under remodels and additions, you'll see a statement in there because the board requested that it be specific back to the resolution that was adopted on August 18th. So that's really what that addition was, is it ties it back to resolution 205-16, which is the also known as project list approved by the board. Really, those were the changes. There was a couple next steps identified also by the board, and that is to make this available on a website. If that's still the wishes of the board, we can do that very soon also.
Is there out there? Board packet. Any questions?
I just want to make a comment. I just wanted to say it was well done, and thank you for the clarifying language that you put in there. It looks good to me. It looks like it represents well our conversation last time and the desires of the board. And yes, I think we should go ahead and post it on the website.
Okay. Any other questions? I figured this would be a short conversation. Now we sit and wait. Thank you. Recap of CASB Resolutions Conference, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Strebe. I'll try to be succinct since everyone's weary. So on October the 15th, I attended as the delegate from District 20's Board of Education, the CASB Legislative Resolution Delegate Conference. It was 3 hours well spent. And overall, you may have seen the information that CASB has since sent out to various to all board members. However, just in case you haven't, the discussion was focused, as you might imagine, on the 3 big areas of concern to boards, and that is as defined within our standing resolutions, local governance and protecting those methods, those avenues for boards, finance, specifically state finance as it relates to P through 12 education, and student academic growth and achievement. As Matt Cook wrote in his summation that went out on on November the 2nd, he states that CASB's legislative agenda, they included resolutions on issues ranging from rewriting the School Finance Act to reestablishing governmental immunity for school districts to supporting the ACT, PSAT, or SAT to satisfy state and federal testing requirements. In several resolutions, delegates made it clear that they want to have a say in proposed legislation and rulemaking that could affect local school boards. At the same time, delegates emphasized that they want freedom to operate locally. For instance, delegates passed a resolution saying that local boards should be able to hold accountable multi-district online charter schools operating in their district in the same way they do with traditional schools. Again, this year, delegates passed a resolution urging CASB to work with lawmakers to address the constraints in the Colorado Constitution that keep the state from properly funding P through 12 education and other public services. I don't know if you had a chance to review the final resolution book that accompanied this email from CASB and Matt Cook, but if you did not, I can specifically address the one resolution that this board expressed some questions about. That one definitely prompted the most discussion other than the finance. There were several similar finance resolutions that were tabled and put towards the very end of the whole conference. But other than those three finance ones, number 12, CASB supports the use of the, well, what it originally stated was CASB supports the use of the PSAT and SAT tests to satisfy federal and state requirements for standardized testing in high school, including at the 9th grade level. And that was submitted by Pooter. The delegate from Pooter said that their idea was just to get a test people wouldn't opt out of, in order to deal with the federal requirements. But as you can imagine, just like we had questions exactly what that meant, so did all the others, and the final version ended up looking much more broad. Some of the suggestions that people said, you know, there was discussion about park, et cetera, but the, and the pros for it were, let me see my notes here, I apologize.
Mrs. Johnson, I have the final copy in front of me.
Oh, good.
Is it at the, I think this might be the one, tell me if this is correct. It's at the bottom of page 7 in the final copy. It ended up being LR 16. CASB supports the use of ACT, PSAT, or SAT. Is that the one?
Exactly. Yes. You can see it's much shorter. Well,
Yes.
it's not much shorter, but it does include all the tests and the rationale that's below it. Thank you, Ms. Van Mater.
Would you like for me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, sure. It well encapsulates exactly what ended up being a very amended resolution.
You're right, it's much briefer and
Yeah.
more concise. You're right, it says CASB supports the use of the ACT, PSAT, or SAT tests to satisfy federal and state requirements for standardized testing in high school, including at the 9th grade level. And the rationale says these tests are more meaningful to students than a specific state test and give students a reason to participate and perform well. These exams also provide a way to compare Colorado students with students across the country.
Exactly. So that one, what ultimately did pass with those amendments, there were 3 that failed entirely. There were also 2 floor resolutions that failed. Everything else came forward and is stated in this book. In regard to what was, find the one that we also discussed somewhat in regarding to dual employment at the same time. That is now LR6, and I really like how it ultimately what it ultimately states, and how it and the rationale I think is quite good. You may recall how what it originally referenced, and it was somewhat of a vague, in my opinion, rationale. I did speak to this one in particular. In my remarks, I highlighted the fact that more than anything, a resolution, a CASB legislative resolution also serves to be, please be on the lookout for this. Please make sure that bad case law, or as it may be viewed from our perspective, doesn't become codified, doesn't become law. And so more of a charge to prevent the codification of a case law through employment. And so reading the new rationale, it says, case law in Colorado has allowed an educator to collect a full salary in one school district, even if the individual works full-time in another school district, and is unavailable to provide services to the first school district. In at least one decision, the Colorado Supreme Court included a footnote suggesting statutory changes were needed. Employment law in Colorado must be considered through an equitable lens that incentivizes individuals to mitigate loss and preserves public resources. And then the final resolution, of course, states, CASB supports legislation to address case law decisions that have held school districts liable for payment of contracts that employees have not fulfilled, and to reinstate the authority of local boards to establish the terms of employment. I really like how it was finally agreed upon. In fact, there were out of the 60 plus delegates there were only 6 no votes on it, even in its state. And so I feel like it was generally very well received and smooth sailing. And I'm appreciative of the LRC, the Legislative Resolution Committee, that introduced this particular resolution. Other than that, if you want to discuss anything particular, you can certainly read the final resolution booklet. I'm happy to address them, like I say, your questions now, or at any time that you may wish. I was curious if it would be useful to include the final resolution booklet, since I have discussed it here this evening in our final board meetings, just minutes, just like a presentation. Or this isn't certainly formal, but I would like this to count for my travel report. Oh, and in addition, there is a day, 2 days before, there are various sessions talking about things that we could all utilize, and one of them that was at both the CASB regional meeting that was over at the Doubletree in September, or was it early October, and then again at the resolution conference, is a partnership, or the discussion of a partnership that CASB has going with Greater Ed Colorado, and they have this really cool tool called Mission Possible, and it allows people to try to balance the Colorado state budget real time, and they really want everyone to have an opportunity to utilize this or to try it. Exactly what comes into play when you try to manage K through 12 funding and transportation and what are you going to cut, et cetera, and they very much want to come and present to boards or allow boards or anyone to give it a try. So I feel obligated to share that good word. So I think that's it, unless you have any further inquiries or questions.
Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, everyone, for your assistance in helping me convey these things at the conference.
Ms. Van Meter?
I just wanted to say, well done. Thank you. I had a conversation with a CASB board member over the weekend, Debbie Lammers, who was filling me in on some things from the conference and talking about that in my role with FRN, because you saw there was something on there about the cannabinoid,
Yes.
all that. So
Or
that
the
affects.
federal.
Yes, that's a federal one. So she was mentioning that to me, and she said you did an outstanding job representing Academy 20. So I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. Please pass on my thanks.
And on that note, before we debrief, it is somebody's birthday.
Oh, my gosh.
For you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Another year of wisdom.
Oh, my Lord. I don't know if I can take anymore.
And our gift to you is we won't sing.
Oh, bravo. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Unless it's Miss Van Mater, she can sing. It was in between all of your homework that you did on the way to being a valedictorian in college, so learn how to sing. Was our business this evening focused on activities that will promote academic achievement and the development of knowledge, skills, and character in our students? Were any items that may not have a direct effect on our goal lens within our scope of responsibility? Thank you. If this would have been last night, then we still have a few innings to go.
I was just thinking you said the artist. That's cool.